As a finishing touch for our project, I'd like to take this opportunity to add a couple of sound effects. A little crowd cheering and the sound of the ball dropping in the cup is just going to complete this animation perfectly. Now, I happen to have a couple of files ready for us to use inside of our Chapter 4 folder. So let's go out to the File menu, and I'm going to choose Import to Library. I'll just go over to our desktop. That's where our project files should be, and then Chapter 4. Now I've got a couple of files right here. I'll just shift to select both of them, and we can import several different file formats. WAV and MP3 are probably amongst the most popular, and you can just bring them right into the library. And I'll do that by clicking Open. Now first let's go check. There we can see our two new items added to the library. They have a little sound icon, and they're ready to be used. And in order to use a sound inside of a flash file, it's actually pretty easy. They only go one place, and that's on a keyframe. Now I'm just going to randomly select a keyframe from our panel up here at the top, one that doesn't have a motion tween on it, and you can see that a typical frame property allows me to attach sound to the keyframe. All I have to do is pull down the menu, and any sound that's in my library is going to show up. What I like to do is I like to give my sound effects their own keyframe, and that way I can move them around independently of the graphics. So let's go right up here to the top and make a new layer for our first sound. I'll rename this layer Drop Sound. And we can place a keyframe wherever we want the drop sound to occur. So let's move the playhead and find out where the ball actually drops into the cup. There's where it hits the lip. And if the cup had any depth to it, it would probably hit the bottom right around here. So let's make a keyframe in our new drop sound layer. I can use the Insert menu and go down to Timeline and just insert a keyframe. Now let's select that keyframe. We'll go down to our keyframe properties and we'll choose the ball drop sound. Now if I move my playhead over a little bit, you can see that the sound actually places a waveform in the file, so you can see where the sound actually occurs. These little bumps are going to correspond to the actual sound playing back in the file. Now it looks like I've got some silence at the beginning before the first bounce occurs, and I can just grab that keyframe since I have it selected and move it back a little bit, and you can see that the sound now is attached to that keyframe, so I can move it around and place it wherever I want. If you want to hear your sound in context with the animation, you can just go up to the control menu and hit play. You can see as the playhead moves over top of the sound, you can hear that bounce down into the bottom of the cup. Now let's go ahead and add our crowd sound on top of that. I'll just give it another layer so it has its own keyframe. So I'm just going to click the New Layer command. That'll make a new layer right on top of our current layer for drop sound. We'll make this cheer, or perhaps cheer sound. And let's move our timeline to see where we're going to put that sound in. The crowd should probably start cheering right after the ball goes in the hole. So for starters, I'm just going to put a keyframe out here, let's say around frame 60. I can use the keyboard shortcut of F6. That'll make a keyframe right here in my sound layer. And once again, that keyframe selected, I can just go down to the sound properties in my frame panel and choose the cheer sound. Now there you can see once again the waveform kind of showing us where the sound's appearing. Again, it looks like there's a little quiet, so we can move this back just a little bit. And that way we'll be able to hear the first drop and then the bounce as the crowd starts cheering. This time, let's use Test Movie to see how our movie's looking. I'll go up to the control panel, choose Test Movie, and in Flash Professional. Now that's not too bad. Let me shut this down. First of all, the crowd noise is a little bit too loud. And second of all, it kind of comes on a little too soon. So I'm going to move it back just a tiny bit. There we go. And let's see what we can set up with the properties of the sound effect itself. Once you've chosen the sound, the most likely change you're going to want to make is volume. And I know this says effect here, but if we pull the menu down, we have a whole bunch of effects that actually change our volume. In each case, we've got control over the left and right channels separately. And if you just select one of these presets, you can get some easy fades or some left to right fades. But if you go down to custom at the bottom, it'll pull up both channels, and what we basically have is a volume control. Now I can drop this down to half volume for the right channel and half volume for the left channel. And that won't be quite so loud. Now in addition, if you really wanted to do some fading effects, you could click anywhere else and it actually creates more handles and more keyframes. So that's kind of what a fade in would look like. But I don't really want that for right now, so I'm just going to pull that back out to the edge, and that way I'll get rid of that extra keyframe. We can play our sound right here just to see if our adjustments have been good. And that's a little bit more appropriate for our project. I'll click OK, and our sound settings are saved. Now that you've finished your animation, you might want to go ahead and publish it and take a look at it. But before we do, let me just point out one thing. Each time we've done a test movie, the program has actually created a SWF file, and we can take a look at it. Let me just minimize my Flash program here for a second. I'll go out to my desktop files, and we'll go back into Chapter 4. And you can see there's our golf flaw we've been working on, but we also have a SWF file. Now the program actually recreates this SWF file and writes over it every time you do a test movie. But it is a SWF file, and it's actually the same file that the program would make right now if we chose the publish settings. So if you don't need an HTML and all you need is a SWF, you're basically done at this point. Now that's it for our golf animation. For our next chapter, we're going to be picking up another sport, and we're going to be looking at more animation and movie clips and also some 3D settings.